what is crypto? Crypto is economic freedom. It's the ability for you and I to make a transaction that's undetectable. Now, we know that governments don't like that, and that's fair. I mean, there are some very strong reasons why governments don't want 100% undetectable transactions. You know, drug dealers, arms dealers, human traffickers. These are people who we want the government to be able to stop them from transacting. So this is, you know, money laundering that these people do. It's a serious problem. The good thing about crypto, and what is amazing to me, is that it's a terrible way for the bad guys to transact because it's all on a public blockchain. I have had multiple conversations over the last 5 years with people from the FBI, not because they're investigating me at conferences. So let's just get that straight. They can investigate away. I'm pretty boring, but basically the head of enforcement at both the New York office and I think it was the Maryland office, one of the sub offices around the FBI was dealing with digital assets. The exact quote both of them made was, "We love it when the bad guys use Bitcoin because they can see it." Yet it is often called that because of the nature of privacy. So you have to ask yourself the question, well, what's really going on here? If you're a politician that is really wants to be able to control everything, you don't want law-abiding citizens to be able to transact with each other. You don't. If you're a politician who only cares about stopping the bad guys, well, you're going to do something very different. And so we're sort of in this world, Gary, where, different things are wanted by different people. And it should be bipartisan, crypto, for a lot of reasons, because, as I said, it's a very inclusive financial system. It decreases the control the big banks have over a variety of processes. You mentioned financing, right? I mean, anyone who knows anything about the financing businesses, whether it's interest rate swaps, whether it's energy financing, whether it's repos, whether it's stock loan, those are controlled by a cartel of banks, where the prices are artificially expensive and the benefits and the ease of use are constrained. Well, distributed finance or decentralized finance in crypto, when that is able to operate on those sorts of instruments, will break that cartel and will be dramatically more efficient. There are people who don't want that. A lot of people don't want efficiency when it eats into their margins. And this is a historic thing. It goes I could give multiple examples, but I think you've seen plenty yourself.
Bitcoin's 15 years old, right? It's a child. I remember in 2000, energy was just kind of like, we spent 20 years doing it, and when there was still tons of food, tons of fertile ground to plow. Then Enron collapsed and everything kind of got weird. What do you think? You said we were in the second or third inning. I was in Nashville. There were 6 or 7 guys from Citibank, 1:30 in the morning. I'm like, what are you guys doing here, dude? I never hear your name here. Oh, we're only doing like $2 billion a month in financing. I'm like, oh, dude. And there are so many people here that do not want to be known they're here. Okay, they are not advertising.
I won't violate NDAs, but I've been forced to sign NDAs just to talk to people in certain industries, right? It's because, think of it this way. If you agree though, for the audience, that there is a lot of major players that do not advertise they're here yet. Oh, all of them. They're all there. They're all doing something.
They're all here.
I'll give you an example of why it is that they're so much on the QT. So when I built our first automated our first automated off-floor market making system in New York for, at the time, was Solomon Smith Barney. I know it incensed Dick Grasso, who was running the New York Stock Exchange at the time, because he wanted all order flow to go down there. And I am a very stubborn individual and very outspoken. And so my boss calls me and says, Dave, I need you to make yourself scarce from 10 to 12. And in fact, call me before you want to come back, or I'll call you when you come back. Go see a movie. Literally, this happened on the trading floor at Solomon Smith Barney. And I'm running a desk at the time. I'm running a market making desk. So this is not a trivial thing. I just said, Bobby, what's going on? He goes, Dick Grasso's coming. And I know you. He knows you by name. He's going to look for you, and he wants to yell at you about why you're siphoning order flow away from the floor. And I know you. You're going to explain how you're doing better for customers. You're going to explain how he's a crook. You're going to explain all this other stuff. So I said, okay, fine. So anyway, I left. Now, the reason that I left is because I knew something and they said something. And that is, at that time, Dick Grasso was president of the New York Stock Exchange, a commercial enterprise, but he was also a regulator. And so the regulator in Dick could make because there's literally no way, and this is a dirty little secret that people don't understand. If people say, oh, look at this firm, they got fined for X or they agreed to settle X. Let me tell you something. It is literally impossible for any financial firm to be 100% compliant. You will never find one because there are rules that are just too prescriptive that are written. And there are even rules that they sometimes get rid of, but they don't bother getting rid of them. They just stop enforcing them. And it's sort of known and understood. So if a regulator gets really mad at a firm, they can make their lives miserable. And they can do so in a way that is very, very costly. I mean, frankly, it's very not very well understood, but it's a big deal. So as a result, think of it. Now, today, the regulator has an avowed hatred for all things crypto. Any firms doing things in that space or being forward-looking there might get their ire. Do they want to take that risk? Of course not. They're going to keep it on the QT. They're not going to buy firms. They're going to get them into it, even though they can. Most of the firms we're talking about are multinational firms. They can do some things in their European office and have nothing to do with America, but they're still going to do it on the QT because the American regulators may still get mad. And this is unfortunately the way the world works. So until we have a regulatory environment which is not hostile, these firms are going to go, they're going to do business, they're going to do things they can do, but they're not going to make a big deal about it, and it's going to be on the QT. And that's why it's happening. That is why you're seeing what you're seeing.
This is really 3 years ago. I was in a deposition. My attorney was an ex-FTC lawyer. The night before, they do a little 3-hour preview. And the first thing out of her mouth was, do not mention Bitcoin. I'm like, huh? What? Now, I hired her specifically because she came out of the FTC and she was buddies with everybody. I think this was Alston Bird. And we literally did nothing wrong. I'm like, dude, I'm not it took me 3 years to get the FTC to tell me how much they wanted for this heinous crime. But when she looked at me and said, hey, you can't mention Bitcoin or blockchain, I'm like, really? Why? Gary, don't be naive. I'm like, well, I'm not being naive. Okay. I think they're draconian. Okay. Draconian. I think our government's going mad, but why shouldn't I mention Bitcoin? It was worse than me being a drug dealer. It was like they didn't understand it. 6 months ago, I go to another deposition, maybe 3 months ago, and the first question out of the lady's mouth was, are you deeply involved in the Bitcoin industry? This is a lawyer, right? I'm like, I'm not sure what deeply means legally, but I am involved, but I don't know what it has to do with this other issue that happened 8 years ago. It's odd, man. Yeah. So, Trump's not going to have any of that. Trump is going to come in here and say, hey, this was my pitch to Trump in Nashville. There's 3 million jobs, sir. Do you want them in Dubai? You want them in America?
That's
They're
right.
$250,000 careers for the next 15 years, not requiring any college education. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I just happen to be in this industry now, and I'm going to be early. And 3 years later, they're going to be like, man, Cardone's been here for a century. And this is the opportunity. And Trump doesn't need to understand blockchain. He's not going to. I don't need the leader. I don't need Jamie Dimon to understand every item behind blockchain or Bitcoin. It's good to hear you saying, though, for the audience, they're all here. And they just
Jamie Dimon understands. He knows. I mean, look, let's look at a simple business. Let's take a really simple, easy one for the banks. Bank of New York and Citi have multi-billion-dollar businesses creating something called American Depository Receipts, so that Americans can buy the largest companies overseas. They also do global depository receipts that allow Europeans, the richer Europeans, to buy American companies, et cetera, et cetera. When an American buys one of these things, they don't have the ability. You can't buy whatever, it doesn't really matter what company it is. Royal Dutch Shell. Yeah. You can't buy Royal Dutch Shell American Depository Receipt and then walk over on an English exchange through your English affiliate and sell it. You can't. They're not fungible between the two, and they never have been. That is a multi-billion-dollar business. Now, here's something that crypto does that and digital finance will do when it takes over is all stocks, all equities that are digital, you'll be able to trade them on the same platform
Oh,
in
wow.
dollars, in euro, in yen, or versus stable coins. And so it becomes truly multi-currency and truly global. That frictional cost reduction and that increase in liquidity is great for entrepreneurs. It's great for company, even the larger companies, but for smaller companies where instead of American depository receipts, they're paying OTC market makers potentially gray market spreads of 15%. Those go away. And oh, by the way, American entrepreneurs can now raise money overseas much more seamlessly. It's dramatically better. No one would argue that. Yet there's a lot of money being made by people who have this inefficient system. And so it's a perfect example. I mean, there are lots of them. That's probably the easiest one to understand because you can immediately see why that would be a big deal if you were a company. Now, of course, America is going to be the last one to want to adopt that. Why? Well, because foreign entrepreneurs want to list in America to get access to our capital, not in Dubai, etc. But now imagine a world where the whole world goes digital and we're not.
Mm.
Now what happens? Now, first of all, none of those foreign companies are listing in America, as a primary place. And second of all, American companies are going to be like, well, wait a minute. There's a lot of money in China. There's a lot of money in Europe. There's a lot of money in Latin America. I don't want to be foreclosed from that. And so ultimately, market forces will push it in this direction. But I always tell people it's going to be 15 to 20 years because you have to fight against, very, very strong profit motives.